Well, you have to build institutions that are going to support small-scale businesses. And one of those institutions is the Village Bank. The Village Bank is going to be like a platform upon which all these institutions are going to be based, are going to be supported. The Village Bank needs to support producer groups. The Village Bank needs to support commodity stores. The Village Bank needs to support agro-input dealers. So in Ruhiira, we find it very, very important to have the Village Bank set up, the Village Bank strengthened to act as a platform upon which small businesses are going to be based.
So tell me, what types of small businesses are being developed in Ruhiira, in the Village Bank?
So the Village Bank has been supporting various types of businesses. There are people that come wanting money for, to start horticultural, enterprises, growing fruits like cabbages, growing crops like potatoes and beans. And there are those that come for loans to start up, stores, small stores within the communities. An interesting example was somebody who identified a gap in input supply, specifically animal production inputs, a vet store. We didn't have a vet store in the whole cluster, and yet there are animals there. People used to go all the way to Mbarara, to get drugs to treat their animals. And so this gentleman came up with this proposal. We helped him to develop a business plan, and we recommended that he gets money from the bank to start up this store. The store is up and running. People no longer go to Mbarara to get veterinary drugs. The charges are quite similar to what Mbarara town is charging. Mbarara is the nearest town to the cluster. And we've been able to link him to the vet importers, the input importers in Kampala. So he has that direct linkage. He got funding from the Village Bank. His repayment is very good. He hasn't defaulted. And, it's a very, very classic example of how the Village Bank can support a business that is developmental in nature.
How does the Village Bank work?
The Village Bank is owned by a group of women. They, in an annual general meeting, elected a board of governors. Now that board is composed of mainly women. There are some men on the board as well. But the board couldn't do the day-to-day running of the bank. They needed to recruit professional staff to do it. And so they advertised for a manager position, a cashier position, and a loans officer position. Candidates were interviewed. It was a competitive recruitment process. The best candidates were identified, and now there is a manager that is responsible for the general management of the bank. There is a cashier that receives the money, and there is a loans officer that goes out to the communities, counseling people on what enterprises are financially attractive, following up with the loans, reminding the villagers, reminding the people that have borrowed money when they are supposed to return the money, and advising them on how to run their enterprise. When you have borrowed money, the difference with this bank is that there is somebody to follow you up to advise you on how to run the business. It's not like the conventional banks where after you have borrowed the money, they are not interested in what you're doing. All they're interested is you bringing back the payment. It's not the case. We want 100% repayment. So we need to invest efforts in following up people and advising them how to best run their businesses. So you have 3 staff members. in the bank that report to the board. Now, if you want money, there are certain conditions that you have to fulfill. One, you have to have an account in the bank. Secondly, you have to have 20% of the money that you want to borrow. If you want to borrow $100, on your account you have to have 20% of $100, which is going to act as collateral. Then you need to have approval from 2 reputable members of the bank. They recommend you. Also, you need a recommendation from the local council member. In the Uganda decentralized governance structure, we have local councils at every village level, democratically elected. They are like the representative of government at that level. So you need that recommendation from the local councillor, then the 2 members of the bank, reputable members of the bank, and the 20% deposit that will be on your account. If you fulfill those conditions, then you'll get a loan. The decision to grant a loan is not only made by the bank management. There is what we call a loans committee. So there is the board of governors and the loans committee. The loans committee is also elected by the General Assembly, and they're the ones that are responsible for making the final approval. The bank manager and the loans officer will process the applications, make sure that all the documentation is right, and then they present the application to the loans committee, which takes the final decision. So you can see there's a very heavy involvement of the owners of the bank who are the committee members.